I'll try
Awesome.
and go as quickly
Class,
as possible.
balance, and brand new
firstly,
uniques.
thank you all for your feedback and comments. We got a lot of class-related feedback on the PTR, a lot of balance feedback, a lot of just how it feels to play things. And we actually reacted pretty heavily and did a lot of changes between PTR and Season 5 launch, some of which I think some people know, and some things are going to be new for you today. So really, yeah, we have a lot of things that changed. In many ways, honestly, it's going to feel like almost from a balance perspective and kind of what your class can do in your journey, it's going to feel almost like a very different game compared to what you experience on the PTR. I'm going to go through a lot of like the systemic reasons why, and then some specific things that we did to every class, as well as, of course, updating all of our uniques and kind of
all the uniques, guys. He said it.
That.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Lots to talk about. So first, we're going to be talking about bug fixes. We've got quite a few to go through that I think are pretty notable. Again, we're going to be doing the class balance updates after that, and then the unique changes. So those will be the three things I'm going to be covering today. So firstly, as usual, we're going to be publishing the patch notes right after this, so you can read all of them. I'm not going to cover everything today, but just some of the more notable ones. So first is one on the Necromancer that we've heard about for a while now. It's a Shield and Storm.
This is good for
This is a legendary that when your Bone Storm damages enemies, you get a barrier equal to your max life. It used to be based on your base life instead of your max life, and now we finally fixed that. To be clear, this is a pretty huge buff. We may have to reevaluate the power of this a little later, but we're going to see how it goes. But now that barrier is going to be very significant as you're hitting enemies with this aspect. Next, we've got a couple on the Barbarian. The first one is the Twister glyph. This is a Paragon node glyph. It wasn't properly giving you bonus multiplicative damage when casting Dust Devils. So Dust Devil builds will be stronger. Buffed. We also fixed an issue with the Tempering Earthquake duration. Beforehand, there was a bug where it was actually lowering the DPS of Earthquake because it was increased the duration, and then your DPS would go down. So we fixed that.
Wow,
So
that's a really weird thing. I didn't even know that was a thing with the Earthquake.
Next one, I'm going to call out our one of our content creators, Yugioh.
This is getting nerfed. Unlucky.
He found a neat little oversight that we had with a passive called Trick Attacks, and I'm actually going to go over this in a little bit of detail.
So if you can still get it to 12, it still doesn't matter, guys. You're going to get 100% crit.
Rank, so offensive passive is pretty good. So a little bit of background to this. Basically, we changed how this passive Trick Attacks, what it does. It went from something that was more utility-based, where it was around CC, and we turned it into damage. But we didn't update under the hood for like tempering and where it can appear from a utility to a damage recipe of where it would show up. And so it was appearing on utility, which is a lot more common than damage, and then you could get it to silly ranks like this. So to fix this, right now, or on the PTR, I should say, it was on this recipe called Alchemist Control, where it was with Chilling Weight and Shadow Crash, which are also like CC-based passives.
Oh, so you can only...
For Season 5 launch, we're actually going to be disabling this recipe from dropping. You won't be able to see it for a patch.
You just lose it?
While we fix this bug. And what we're going to do is, once we re-enable the Alchemist Control recipe to drop, Trick Attacks won't be on here anymore. What we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be taking Flurry Size from another recipe called Rogue Innovation here.
But no one really
moving
uses
Flurry Size, which is more of a utility-based thing, and moving that over to Alchemist Control, and then just removing Trick Attacks from Alchemist Control. So the net effect of this will be that now both recipes will have, both tempering recipes will have 3 different options of what you can have there, and Rogue Innovation will actually have a little bit of a buff here too, because instead of having 4 things to roll for your tempers, we're only going to have 3. So it'll be a little bit easier to get what you want. Next, we're going to be talking about some generic class balance updates. So kind of to set you up, a high-level theme that we're going to see in our feedback from PTR was Barbarians are really, really good, and every other class is kind of a little bit weak, it feels like, compared to Barbarians. So we did a lot of things to address this. So first, I want to go into detail a little bit of how we feel about Barbarians and where they're at and what we want to do. We feel like one of the bigger reasons why Barbarians are so strong is that they kind of have 2 class mechanics compared to other classes, right? They have the expertise system, which is like a normal class. It's
the second weapon and two-handed aspect that makes them so good.
Bonuses. But then they also get more item slots compared to other classes, so they get more access to more legendary powers. As far as how we tackle this, we don't want our only solution to be to nerf Barbarians, right? Like a common thing that we hear is like, hey, they have more item slots. Maybe you should just get rid of the item slots so that everybody has parity, right? Like, that is a way to make parity, but it takes away from their theme of being a master of weapons, and it's not very fun. So that's not the only thing that we want to do in this situation. The other thing is that we want to keep their class identity, right? Another common suggestion we hear is, well, just give all the other classes more item slots so that they're the same as Barbarian, right? And similarly, kind of like how Necromancers have minions, we don't want to give every class minions just because, they don't have access to the cool thing that Necromancers do. We don't want to just give every class, more slots so that they're exactly the same as Barbarian. We want to really try and keep what makes them feel special as a special thing and find other ways to kind of bring parity to the classes. So here's kind of our strategy of what we're thinking of with Barbarians. We have a few different things that we're going to be doing. One is we're actually going to be adjusting how much damage all the classes get from their core stat. And this is going to bring other classes up to the level of Barbarian. I'm going to be going over that in a little bit. We are going to be reducing the power of Barbarians as part of our solution. But again, I want to point out it's not the only thing that we want to do. And then we also want to target the other class mechanics and really bring them up to the level of the Barbarian effectively having too, and making the other classes feel cool in the way that makes them thematic and awesome. We already actually experimented with this in Season 4. This was an intentional thing that we did, and we wanted to see how it went with the Necromancer. If you remember, we buffed minions very heavily, and we also buffed the Book of the Dead, their class mechanic, very heavily. Not just numbers, but also in the cool factor, right? You have mechanics like, your minions can throw bone spears, or, your golem can do bone spikes everywhere and make enemies vulnerable. We want to do this kind of treatment to the other class mechanics. Just to be clear, we're going to be probably doing this after the Vessel of Hatred expansion launches, so it'll be a little bit.
So this is like Season 7.
In the meantime to catch them up, but you can expect in the future we're going to be doing kind of a big overhaul to the other classes, similarly to the Book of the Dead, and so their cool factor and their power level is going to be going up. So let's talk about that core stat update that I talked about previously. So basically what we're doing here is we're going to be changing the amount of damage that every class gets from their core stat. So if you didn't know, on live right now, when you log into the game, you get about 1% more damage per 10 stat of your class.
It's basically a lot of the other classes
example,
are getting a buff.
I don't know, pick one. The Sorceress, with Intelligence, you would have 10 int, and then you would get 1% more damage. If you had 100 int, you'd have 10% more damage, and so on. So now it's going to actually depend on the class what that ratio is of how much damage you get per your core stat. So the Barbarian is going to be staying exactly the same, 1% more damage per 10 strength. The Rogue is going to get a little bit of a buff here because they do have a little bit more slots compared to other classes, so they're going to be getting 1% more damage per 9 dex. And then the other 3 classes, the Sorceress, Druid, and Necromancer, are going to be getting 1% more damage per 8 core stat.
So that means roll int and willpower on those
the
classes.
TLDR here is Barbarians are staying the same, Rogues are going to get a bit of a bump, a bit of a buff, and the other 3 classes are going to get even more damage. So as you get that core stat, which you get very commonly, in
on average, you get like
and other places,
800 to 1,000
more damage. It's just a passive way that we're going to be catching up the classes,
like core
stat-wise. So next, let's move on to kind of our class updates. So I'm going to be going through all the different classes and talking about kind of what our updates are going to be for them. Some of the things you can expect that are different from PTR to launch. So Barbarian,
we'll talk about Barbarians
in addition to having more item slots, I have some of the best key passives in the game, like in Season 4 and on live. One of the very main ways that we're targeting bringing them down is reducing the power level so that really their key passives are comparable to other classes. We on the team felt like, they already have all these other things that are really strong going for them. They don't need like overly statted, way powerful key passives that do like, over 100% multiplicative damage when the other classes are doing way
we're
less.
introducing caps now.
So you did see that on the PTR. We did see a lot of feedback on like, why are we bringing down Walking Arsenal to have parity?
Yeah, exactly.
When, it wasn't even really meta compared to the other key passives. And I just kind of wanted to bring some light to this of how we think about it.
If you nerf,
the reason why we brought Walking Arsenal to be level with the other ones when we brought them to be equal to other classes,
because it's still too strong,
is that we want all the key passes on Barbarian to have parity with each other. If we just brought down the other key passives that were way overperforming and didn't bring Walking Arsenal down to be even with them, then really Walking Arsenal is just going to be the best mandatory pick, and every Barbarian build is going to have to interact with this system. And we really wanted them to be equal with each other, so that there's actually a choice when you get to your key passive of which one.
So even the worst Barbarian one is still too powerful.
What our thinking was there. But it's not all doom and gloom for Barbarians.
Are we getting some buffs? Let's see the buffs though. Hold on.
Like, man, it really sucks. I understand that they're being brought down and it's fair, but we want to have some things to look forward to.
We get 3% more damage.
Introduce a number of buffs coming in between PTR and
I got double against bosses is good though.
And new build paths or your underperforming builds are not being brought down as well. So I'm going to give a couple of examples here. One
maybe
is Hammer
Hoda Barb
is
coming back.
Its damage baseline by 10%. And we also adjusted the of Ancestral Force legendary. One of the troubling things that this build has problems with is like single target damage against bosses and things. It does really good in AoE and brings down enemies, but its single target's a little bit lacking. So we're upgrading this legendary power. So now it's going to be
the new icons are really sick, by the way.
So it'll kind of
you guys didn't know
that single target.
They updated all like the icons as well.
Another one is Upheaval. Upheaval builds can rejoice, and also a little bit of a preview,
what are we getting?
Kind of how we're changing uniques, which I'll be going
over
more later. But we're increasing Upheaval damage by about 15%. And we also rounded out Hellhammer now. It's quite a bit more powerful. I can point out a bunch of things here of how it's better. But you can see
300
strength of Upheaval compared to before. The damage of its burning on the ground, just baseline went up. It also has scaling on the burning damage. So, before the burning damage wasn't really a meaningful
10%
part of the
X.
Invest
in the Hellhammer, boys.
Across the board is that they're going to be a lot more about the thematic of what the unique is, and that's where their power is going to be. So here, the burning
so maybe we actually have
a
brand new Barbarian build.
So,
that'll be something to look out
doing
for.
Meaningful damage, hopefully. You can also see its inherent affix now is damage to burning enemies. Instead of overpower damage, so it's going with that theme of Hellhammer burning the ground. It's also giving you skill ranks of Wall Up, a passive, so that's more multiplicative damage. You also get Upheaval size, so now your burning ground and your Upheaval is going to be bigger. So there's just all kinds of new things going on. It's going to be a lot cooler, a lot more powerful, and hopefully a lot more fun.
Yeah, Hellhammer looks
The reason why I actually am most interested in this is it doesn't have a cap.
Also, by the way, no big
300
deal.
strength,
Or 360 strength, no big deal.
No big
So you
deal.
get 1,000 strength, that's 100x damage. Let's
go.
No,
Okay,
we're going to play that 100%.
We got so much. I'm going to stop us right here. We got so much feedback about the Sorceress.
Just a little bit. And the Druid.
And the Necromancer. I will just note, we hear you guys. We absolutely do. Yeah. Okay, now you may continue.
Okay. So,
huge Sorc buffs.
We heard feedback that they're not powerful enough. So we did quite a few things to address it. Firstly, they've got a lot of large buffs to their uniques. I would say even more than other classes. Your uniques are going to feel really good, is the hope, and I think we've hit it. And I'll be going over some of them a little bit later. We also buffed all of their core and mastery skills by about 15 to 20%. So just baseline. Remember, this is in addition to the core stat buff.
So the core stat's almost like 20%, right?
Are also getting buffed baseline.
I want to say roughly.
Degree, so you're just going to hit harder. We also did multiple defensive buffs. We heard a lot of feedback that they have trouble surviving in situations that the other classes could kind of get away with. These are some examples. We did more than this.
The ice armor,
your base shield amount is going up from 40%
should be able to heal you as you
of your max life.
Do damage, though.
Snow Veiled aspect. This one was updated from PTR to launch. So on PTR, it was that your ice armor gave you unstoppable and gave you armor. And on launch, you're still going to get unstoppable, but you're going to get damage reduction, which
that's
anyone
much
who
better.
knows how the defenses within this game work.
Okay, you can. My build actually can keep this up the whole time. So it's 25 DR is pretty nice.
Gobble up DR like Pac-Man, as much as you can get, the more the
better.
Yep,
that's going to be good.
The DR is going to be huge. Very big.
Ice armor on Sorc is going to be god tier.
Also, we did multiple buffs to the Paragon board. Again, this is not covering everything, but one of the things is that we put a lot of caps to make sure that some Paragon noses just didn't go out of control compared to everything else. But we heard feedback that those caps were a little bit too punishing.
Yeah, no
so
caps,
we
no caps.
them. An example here is Burning Instinct, where on PTR it capped at 40% more multiplicative damage. And we increased that up to 80%. So now your burning damage, that's based on your crit strike.
I just don't like the idea of caps in it. Like, if I'm going to build a character for it, I want to go to the moon with that stat, right? Like, if this is an int stacker, that's my build. Just like in PoE. Like, it's a cool niche thing.
That's much higher. So Druid, similar to Sorceress, surprise, surprise, got a lot of feedback that it's not powerful enough compared to the Barbarian or other classes. So we've got a lot of multiple quality of life and damage buffs coming in. Again, these are just some examples. Also, you got to remember the uniques are going to be coming in as well. Boulder damage went up. We increased the damage across the board of their core skills mostly, and we missed boulders, so we're increasing their damage a bit.
Boulder double damage.
We came out with this really cool unique for Cataclysm that made the lightning bolts smart and target enemies. And then a lot of people were like, "Hey, why does it have to get a unique to make my skill be smart?" And we agreed, so we just made the skill smart baseline. So now those lightning bolts
it used to target nothing.
Enemies.
But now it works, so that's good.
Key passive is getting its damage boosted from 30 to 40%. Seismic shift. This was an aspect that we think is really cool, where your earth spike kind of goes in a line and does a bunch of earth spikes. Used to have a kiss curse mechanic, and it no longer does. So before it used to give you this big bonus of, way more resource reduction gen and more damage on it. But it added a cooldown, and now it just doesn't add a cooldown, so you can spam it and cast a bunch of Earth Spikes everywhere. Should be a lot more fun. Also, similar to the Sorceress, we're buffing their little bonus cap on their Legendary Paragon nodes. So, an example here, they went from 40 to 60%, so you've got Thunderstruck, Earthen Devastation, and Survival Instincts. We've got a little visual there at the bottom node, but you can see that top end of the damage is now 60%.
Cataclysm unique got changed. That's really good.
Also, we came out with that new unique I mentioned for Cataclysm. It used to be on the gloves on PTR, which a lot of people we agreed with. It kind of felt bad that you've got the two storm-related uniques on the same slot. You can't take them together. It was competing with Unsun Ascetics Wraps. This was the Lightning Storm unique.
It's where you hold still and you channel a thing.
So now you can take them both together, so they're not competing with each other anymore. Next is the Rogue.
Oh yeah, Rogue is the best class right now.
We feel like it's in a pretty good spot, so we didn't do as many changes compared to other classes. We did still do a few that I'll mention today, but they got the least changes.
Yeah, trick attacks actually got nerfed.
The first one is Flurry. So as you know, if you played the PTR, Flurry got some pretty dramatic updates, right? Both of their enhancement and both of their choices that you could pick on the base skill got changed and made a lot better. We saw that, a lot of the output of Flurry was related to doing the mechanics that the enhancement and the advanced Flurry were requiring you to do, like casting it a bunch of times in a row and stuff like that. And we wanted to move some of that damage from those enhancements and things into the base skill. So the enhancement and the advanced Flurry are still going to be pretty potent, but we lowered their damage and instead just juiced the base skill even more.
So it has more front-loaded damage
just
now.
That you're going to be more consistently doing that damage, and you're going to be less reliant on doing the stacking mechanics to get it. Next, Windforce. This one has had a troubled history of just trying to find ways to make it really good and useful. Instead of knocking back enemies when it procs, it's going to knock them down now. So you no longer have to worry about knocking enemies out of your CC, or you want them to be grouped up next to you, and then you're just knocking one of them or a few of them away. Yeah. Now they're just going to go in place. We have a before and after here. Again,
I already have this build, by the way. Uniques. If you guys need to see it, it will be linked.
You can see some of the things here as a preview. It's going to give you move speed baseline, which is pretty interesting as a stat on a bow. You've got chance for double projectiles for your barrage. You've got a couple passive upgrades there. And then as you can see, the damage went up, but also now it knocks down enemies instead of knocks them back.
And also has barrage counts twice, which is huge.
We've been hearing a lot of feedback that Blood Necromancer players are a little sad. They just aren't really catching up to the other versions of Necromancer. So we've buffed up a bunch of their tempering recipes and the damage on them.
Like a lot of double damage. Just look at that.
Legendary Paragon nodes. Here's some here that we did. Bloodbath. This one just makes your overpower damage go up. Makes being doubled from 35% to 70%. So that's pretty meaty. Blood begets blood. That damage bonus when you're picking up blood orbs is being doubled, and the maximum amount is being doubled, so you're getting more per stack, and you need less stacks to get to your max damage. So pretty good there. And then last but not least here, Lucky Hit. We've heard a lot of feedback from Necromancer players that they kind of rely a lot on the Miasma Corpse Explosion to get their Lucky Hit procs off, and that their other skills don't really compete, and so they can't really have fun with Lucky Hit-based builds.
It's like almost
more generally.
Double across the board, right?
Lucky Hit on a bunch of different skills, so you can see there what all the numbers are. Again, those will be on the patch notes, but really they're just going to be Lucky Hitting more often and getting cool procs more. All right, so next, let's talk about uniques a little bit, right?
I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, super excited. As we promised, in the PTR stream, we said that, we had this kind of different philosophy when it comes to uniques, and we went into detail there. And we updated our uniques coming into Season 5, but we didn't update all of our existing uniques in the game yet. So we've done that pass now. We've updated nearly every unique in the game, and I'm going to do a little bit of a recap of kind of how we thought, and then giving you some examples.
This update, guys, will come out in less than a week.
So these updates are fairly dramatic. They're going to be showing you 3 from each class, as well as 3 generic ones.
I want to see all of them, but we're going to have to probably check out the patch notes.
Thought of updating uniques and kind of what you can expect for your builds.
Yeah, and I know, and Marcus is going to remind us about this at the end as well. But
you'll be hearing it a lot.
Yeah. But I will say, we are showing 3 here and 3 for every class and 3 generic ones. But every single unique.
Oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for.
And we have a before and after in the patch notes, so you guys will have easy.
Oh, cool! If it shows them side by side, yes.
What was the difference?
So after the stream, you'll be able to.
I mean, I pretty much know all of them.
It's only covering a small amount here. we'll see everything.
But
just a little sample serving.
It really helps out
absolutely massive
for content creators.
That'd be pretty
Lots
cool
of snack on there.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to go screenshot every single thing.
So one of the things is your general power level of unique effects is up, and by unique effects, I want to be clear. That is like the thing at the bottom that is like your, deals 40 to 60% more multiplicative damage or whatever. That number is going to be up on the higher end. So instead of 40 to 60, it'll be 40 to 80 or 40 to 90 or 40 to whatever, right? So that power level is just going to be generally up almost across the board. And then really what we targeted for these updates is the stats on the uniques. So the stats are going to pretty much break every rule that we had in the game before when it comes to being a cool item. So some things that you're going to see, and I think I got an example of most of, if not all of these, but you're going to see uniques that have different inherents compared to other stats. So, your boot inherent, could be something that's not even related to boots or movement anymore. It could be something else. Or sometimes we add more inherent stats. So something that didn't exist before, some items can have 2 inherents instead of just 1, which is a pretty big difference. We have a lot more that have stats that break normal slot rules. So, things like movement speed on bows or cooldown reduction on weapons, stuff like that.
That's good. What's what a unique should be.
Have tempering affixes, right?
All good changes,
really
man.
In season
no
4,
max level
but
increase.
Now that tempering's in the game, and uniques have to compete with these really great tempered items. Uniques can have that too. They can also have much higher potential stat values compared to normal items. So, if a normal item has 20 to 40% more damage, a unique can be like, 1 to 300% more damage or whatever, right? And we even do this with the tempered affixes. So, unique can have juiced up versions of tempered affixes that make them solve those problems much quicker. Also, we've introduced a lot of stats that really have powerful effects on them. Sometimes even a single stat on a unique can have the impact that a legendary power normally would on an item as far as what it does to a build. And we'll have a couple examples of that where like a stat on an item is actually giving you a new effect that didn't exist before that you could do.
So it's not even on the unique, it's on just a stat. That's even cooler.
Again, we're going to be going through 3 examples per class and 3 generics. And I'm going to just try and quickly go through and kind of point out some of the key things that are kind of neat about the items. So we're going to shotgun this a little bit, and you're going to see some cool items. So let's get to it. Woo. Yeah, so first, Penitent Greaves. This is a generic unique. You can see here, this one now has 2 inherents as opposed to 1. Another thing that you can notice is that normally
they're calling it an implicit and an inherent.
More move speed.
I didn't understand what they were talking about.
And this one is not only has 2 inherents, but it's for 2 seconds. So you'll evade and boost around at crazy sonic speed for a couple seconds, which is pretty neat. And now you can run through enemies while you do it. We've also got some neat stats there, like crit chance against chilled enemies and chill potency there that are
screenshotting all of these.
Game. Here, Fists of Fate. This one a lot of people saw.
This one's godly. If you're a rogue player,
so one thing I think that's
lucky
kind of
hit.
Cool is that,
almost
with
50.
Our uniques, we're really trying to
over
double
50%
on the fantasy of the item.
Look at that.
So if something's about cold or something here, like Fist of Fate is about like RNG to the max. So we're really going hard on what the theme is.
I just noticed that.
You can see your attack speed can go from 0.1 to 8.7, and everything on it is has a huge range of what you can roll. So a greater affixed Fist of Fate could be a best in slot item for a lot of builds.
That lucky hit crit,
Yes, this is the one that people point out that we.
It's just crazy.
I talked with one of the.
We're gonna farm that. That is probably one of the best things in the game.
Team who did a lot of this work, and
it just means it's gonna be
here,
impossible for most people to get.
Go conservative, let's just go crazy. This might be insane.
It might be the best thing in the game, though.
Slot and break stuff, but it's really cool. So, greater affix Fist of Fate there is going to be really cool.
Oh, the Trojan Grandfather?
Wait,
300?
A lot of people had issues with the ignored durability loss. Where you would masterwork hit that or something, and then you're not getting anything. We just moved that into be a baseline.
Oh, dude, they just doubled the stats of the Grandfather. Dude, if you get a greater affix all stats, that's actually insane.
Even in Season 4, because that durability loss was kind of, it was actually a hidden stat item. Sometimes when you found a greater affixed version of a Grandfather, it would actually apply to that. That is now
that's all gone.
Dunzo.
It's just inherents can't be greater, which is something that we thought.
That's a crazy buff, man.
Yeah, so now let's go into the classes. Barbarian, this is Battle Trance. This one exists already on live. Probably the 2 big things here. One is, you have 2 different passives now that you get. A lot of times we're adding skill ranks to passives because that's a way to add multiplicative damage or just buffs to really cool effects on a unique via their stats. The other thing to point out here is the actual effect. Before it was giving you increased attack speed to all of your other skills when you had frenzy stacks. Now you're going to be getting damage and attack speed. You know, we heard a lot of feedback from players that they would hit attack speed cap, and then this unique wasn't really doing very much for them. So now you're also just going to get damage in addition to making it easier to hit that cap for your other skills.
I don't know if people just play that, but
more stats.
Yeah, it's because the Lockeram's Talisman is too good.
A couple things here. One is it's giving you skill ranks of Rend, which is pretty significant. And remember, that 2 to 3 might not seem so significant, but when you greater affix that and then masterwork it, like your potential of more damage on this goes up very significantly. We're also giving you skill ranks of brawling skills still. Thing to point out here is your Rend's duration. This will also just increase the throughput damage of it. Has been doubled, so that's just more damage.
But since they nerfed like the bleed, like.
And then also at the bottom, small little detail.
Key passive.
Before you could only apply that special effect of your brawling skills, applying your Rend's bleed every 4 seconds, and now it's every second. So now if you're able to spam brawling skills, you're just going to be applying Rend bleeds.
This actually might be kind of cool.
Stronger Rend bleeds.
I'll note it for sure.
It's a pretty big power boost. Next, the Fields of Crimson. The thing I really want to call out here, I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of unique and different, but is that one kind of rule that we had with item stats that we're now changing and breaking is we never really buffed things like enhancements or like the AB, like the different choice upgrades that you could do for a skill. This one actually buffs Enhanced Rupture's explosion size. So, you know, normally when you rupture an enemy, it does that explosion. This will make that explosion be way bigger. So it's kind of a neat way that we can manipulate player power via stats. Next, let's move on to the Sorceress. So the Staff of Endless Rage, we actually have a combo here that we're going to show a little video of, a before and after with this. Fireball builds.
I actually really like Fireball.
And the gloves would be doing some unique things to Fireballs. One is plus Fireball projectile speed. So this is actually going to make your Fireballs fly through the air faster or bounce quicker. And so you'll be able to get through them and they'll, you know, finish their path faster. You've got the tempering recipe now, so it doesn't compete with your chance to cast twice. And you can see there, it goes up to 75% just on that one stat. So it basically almost solves it for you by itself, which is pretty huge. You've got some massive skill ranks to Fireball, so now, again, way more multiplicative damage than before.
You get that greater affix?
And then you can see at the bottom that the upper end of that damage is going up for the same as most of our uniques. And next is combos with the Gloves of the Illuminator.
Oh, does this get buffed too?
A couple things to kind of gloat on here is the Fireball attack speed is going up by a much bigger amount than other classes, or than normal attack speed, sorry.
And 2 mana when it explodes, so like also, no resource problem.
When Fireball explodes. I
That's
played
way
with
better.
This build, and I think it was Season 1, and I constantly ran into mana issues because you always want to spam this as much as you can. So when you think of this stat, you know, you can greater this, you can temp or masterwork this.
And you kind of combine this with the attack speed here, and then you combine it with the projectile speed.
Yeah, and you get a lot more fireballs. Remember, it's every time that it explodes, which when it bounces, it's exploding.
Yeah.
And when you're splitting and getting more from multiple projectiles, you're getting more bounce explosions.
So basically, you solve mana on it.
Resource
awesome.
Yeah, you're essentially a fireball machine gun.
Yeah. So we've got a little bit of a Season 4 to Season 5 comparison here of what it looks like. A little video. So in Season 4, you can see, you know, every third cast gives you 3. But Season 5, you're going to randomly get three, and then sometimes even more when it combines with the double projectile bonus.
Oh, so you get like
really
6.
Fill up your screen with.
Wow, that's cool, man.
And every one of those bounces is giving you mana.
I actually thought that this was already a pretty solid build, so like that's what I would probably look at.
It's its own little engine.
But those Fists of Fate are crazy
Blue
good.
Rose,
which is for the Blizzard
one. The thing to point out here is there's a chance for ice spikes to explode twice.
You definitely want that greater affix.
Something that we haven't really done, where we have these, we call them sub powers internally, but you know, these things like dust devils or ice spikes that are like powers that generate when you cast a skill that are usually through legendaries or uniques. We generally don't manipulate them too heavily like this, but we're going to be experimenting more with that in unique stat affixes. So here, you know,
it's potentially going to double your damage too.
Proc, so they get, you know, double explosions, and then any other things that would proc off that would be.
And the amount of ice spike damage. Look at that, 300% damage.
Next, let's move on to the Druid.
That's pretty big, man.
So Waxing Gibbous.
Ooh, nice. I actually love this item.
Shred Druid unique. So what we did here that I want to point out, you know, in addition to the fact that you're getting a bunch of skill ranks to Shred and Toxic Claws, which is a bunch more multiplicative damage, so power level is going up significantly, is Blood Howl grants stealth for a few seconds. So what's really cool about this is, you know, we basically added a new mechanic via a simple item stat in this unique, and it combines with the unique effect, right? So before on live, you know, you kill enemies with Shred, you go into stealth, and then you come out and you guaranteed crit. So as you're killing enemies over and over, you're just critting constantly as you go in and out of stealth. But you couldn't really do that against bosses. You had no other ways to get into stealth. But now we've created an alternative way where if you cast Blood Howl or get the Blood Howl effect in other ways, you'll go into stealth and get this proc, and now you can get this, against single bosses. Or
here's the thing though, Blood Howl only gets cooldown reduction on kill.
A potential way to create your own engine.
So unless you have a lot of cooldown reduction, that'll be kind of hard to hit, but it's possible.
Crone. I believe we showed this one earlier to people, but just wanted to point out, what was special about
80
this.
crit?
Storm Strike chaining to additional targets, things like this. Again, it's a single stat that does something that kind of really changes how the unique works, right? You're gonna get all the different.
And he has damage to close too, which is another good thing. That's
you can also see here
actually
that
very
upper
massive.
End of that damage that you could get is going up from 150% to 200, so it's just better. And last but not least, we got Storm's Companion. This one I again wanted to highlight another new thing that we're doing, and I want to call it here is the lucky hit chance for the pack leader spirit boon. So normally we never really manipulate class mechanics, but here, this pack leader, this isn't like a passive or thing in the skill tree. This is in the spirit boon, your class mechanic, and this increases that lucky hit chance to get a reset on the cooldowns of all your companion skills. So again, this is something that normally we don't get to manipulate, and now you'll be able to do, and I think it'll be pretty.
I mean, it was actually pretty spammable already. I actually have this build,
instead of one.
So it's going to be a lot better for sure.
Yeah, everything's
changing.
All right, moving on to the rogue.
Oh yes,
Eagle Horn.
Nice.
Let me see. What did I want to? I think just pointing out here, this was about moving the tempered recipe. The penetrating shot projectiles can cast twice. Again, another example.
That's
of that.
good, and has attack speed.
A bunch of skill
they removed the
shot.
crit
Again,
though.
This is a way that we're adding just like
every fourth cast is still kind of mid though.
In ways that aren't in the unique effect.
Yeah, I don't really like that.
So these stats on these things can be very strong out the gate, and then again, tempering and masterworking.
Because then you lose out on the two-handed one.
Really, really high. Next, Word of a Con. This one was a really silly, fun one that we liked. You see there, the one I want to point out. Well, one is the ultimate damage. Actually, ultimate skill damage for the Rogue is kind of a premium because they have that Paragon node that makes it turn into multiplicative damage for all your skills. So that's actually pretty.
As long as that doesn't have a cap, if we mix this with what is it?
Also, the chance for Rain of Arrows waves to cast twice.
Wow.
So normally
the base is 85.
Chance to double cast on ultimates, but again, uniques get to break
41
so
cooldown.
Oh my gosh. Juiced up Rain of Arrows cooldown reduction. They can cast twice, and they hit way harder.
Okay, so we can make a Word of Hakan build
so again,
for sure.
Really trying to bring out the theme and the fantasy of these uniques in the stats, in the effects, to really create something special. And next, Saboteur Signet. I was running this in Season 4. I'm a little sad that I'm going to be doing something else in Season 5, but I loved my stun grenade build. But here you can see a bunch of grenade damage, obvious theme for the grenade build. We're also giving you a lot of your stun grenade size here. And then again, a new affix that kind of creates your own engine. You're getting +1 energy when a stun grenade explodes. And this is each individual grenade, right? So you usually release a cluster of these things. So now, again, I spent a lot of my time in Season 4 trying to solve resource and get ways to cast this a lot to throw out those stun grenades, and now this kind of...
They actually buffed it. They actually nerfed it from 4 to 2.
One thing to point
then
out
it's
here is that
2 to
it's
5.
no longer just a Flurry unique. It's casting a core skill, throws stun grenades, so it's a lot more generically applicable.
And it's not even the lucky hit. It's just all the different straight up 45%. Well, if it's perfect roll.
Next, Necromancer. The big one I wanted to point out here. We're going to be showing both of the Blood Surge uniques and how they've been updated, and they combo with each other. We have a stat here that Blood Surge drains more times from elites. So to be clear, this is the drain, not the explosion. But the drain does feed into the explosion damage, and there's a lot of like synergy and things based on draining enemies. So now, one of the problems that Blood Surge has always had is when you're fighting a single target or a boss, you only drain one enemy, and then you're not getting your like explosion damage up. But now you're going to be draining multiple times from those elites, so you're going to be getting more life back and other procs when you drain, but also your explosion will be more significant now against them. Next, Death Speaker's Pendant. This is the other Blood Surge unique. We also added another thing that combines with the other unique where you're getting essence per enemy drained, right? And so now, as you drain enemies for the explosion, you're going to be getting more essence back to cast the skill and spam it more. We're also giving you a bunch of ranks to Blood Surge, which, just makes sense. So, 50%, before...
The problem is the mini novas don't count as another Blood Surge.
Buff to this.
Like, on a lot of the activations.
The numbers also went up on this.
Like, for the overpower, it won't count for it. If it did, it would actually make Blood Surge minions good.
And last but not least, Greaves of the Empty Tomb. This is your Sever unique. Lots of stuff to point out here.
28,000.
Multiple inherents. So, normally you can only get 3 max evade charges. You get more here. We also had a fun little thing where your evade now leaves behind desecrated ground because this is the desecrated ground.
That's really cool.
We also have a chance for several projectiles to cast twice. We have sever size here. We also give you ranks to Reaper's Pursuit. So this is really about just like moving and grooving, like going around. One thing I want to point out here as well is this new aspect of Creeping Mist that came in, and you can combine this with the Greaves of the Empty Tomb. So this new aspect, we heard that Necro players want mobility, and boy did we give you mobility. So what this does is when you evade during, first of all, you get evade cooldown reduction, so you evade more. But when you evade during Blood Mist, you travel twice as far, and both when you enter and exit Blood Mist, it resets your evade cooldown. And one of the things that makes this crazy, where we might actually be crazy, and I hope we don't have to revisit this, but we're going to see, is that reset of your evade cooldown counts for all of your charges of evade. So what this means is, and we have a video, is that you can evade 5 times, then evade in Blood Mist, and then evade 5 more times. So see here, then you're evading in Blood Mist, and you're leaving behind that desecrated ground everywhere and just
skating around,
Yep.
It's like a nice skating rink.
So every time you cast Blood Mist, you're going to be getting 10 evades. It's silly and hilarious, but we're putting it in the game, and I hope we don't regret it.
Necros are going to be zooming.
Yeah, they're going to be zooming with this. So
wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of our preview of our uniques and kind of what's coming into the game. Again, we're pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Professor Adam Jackson, take a bow. That is that is incredible.
Hopefully we'll see more. Remember, guys, every single unique got changed.
Comparison of every single unique and
so
changes from
season 5 is actually looking good with just the uniques.
Check out all those changes, but that was a great overview of all those changes. That is really exciting. This brings us to our Q&A portion of the show.
Okay.
Let's all shift our legs at the same time.
So I'm going to go ahead and end it for this part of like the YouTube session. If there's any good Q&A, I'll try to mention them, but let me know, guys, what you think of Season 5. Are you excited to play? I'm way more excited to play just for the uniques. As far as, like, the season mechanic, though, I mean, it's just kind of going to an area. You get Aether. You get maybe a greater affix. There's not, like, a brand new scaling of power that I'm getting, with the exception of the uniques. So I'm still really excited about Season 5, but what do you think? Let me know your thoughts down below. It's just for the Infernal Hordes mode. Again, getting the Aether. I wanted some other revenue of power versus just a greater affix item, because that already existed in the previous season. I mean, to be honest, the min-maxers are probably still going to be grinding the pit, and then maybe they can just go buy the item with gold. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up. Season 5 looking pretty solid. The uniques look cool, and I'll be updating you guys very soon on not only the builds, and I'll have a bunch of builds pinned that probably won't be changed too much, but on top of that, all the uniques we're going to have to update builds for, because we don't even know at the second, because the blog post hasn't gone up yet, so we'll definitely see it. But let me know what you think of Season 5, and what class you plan to play. I'm definitely 100% going Rogue, at least as of right now, before I see the rest of the uniques.